Hi guys! Today I have another readathon announcement. If you were here before in May when I did the Mermay readathon announcement, welcome back. If you're new, welcome. Like I mentioned, we had a Mermay readathon in May, and so that readathon was a bit more of like competition type thing. It was really fun, but the team that ended up winning was Steph's team, who I will also link her YouTube channel down below. And because her team won, she then decided the next readathon, which she wanted to be a kind of like Halloweeny, creepy type readathon. So it would be best to do it in October. Originally we planned on doing it in November, but both of us were going to be busy in November, so we thought it would be better to do it in October. Also because it's more of like a Halloween theme, so it would be better to do it during October. So this readathon is going to be a little bit different because unlike the Mermay readathon, this one isn't going to be a competition. It's more of a casual readathon. There will be a bingo card and you can go off of those prompts to pick a book for the readathon. I will also give a couple of recommendations that would fit some of these prompts, and also just overall are books that I'm looking forward to reading in October. So like I mentioned, there is a bingo card which I will put on the screen. Let me scoot over so that I have space to put it on the screen correctly. So in the first square you'll have the mushroom, which is a nature-esque book. So that could be nature on the cover, or it takes place in like a nature type setting, like in a forest or something like that, or just a nature setting in general. A good example for these are, for example, 9 Liars by Maureen Johnson, which is a standalone sequel to her Truly Devious series, which is the only one in the series I haven't read yet, so I'm excited to get to this one in October. But as you can see, there are leaves on the cover, so this one also fits very well. And in my opinion, all Maureen Johnson's books fit this very well, even also her most recent one, which is, what was it again? Death at Morning House. That is her new book, which I believe also fits one of the prompts. It does. We'll get to that one in a second. Also, some other books that would fit this prompt in particular very well would be the Lake's Edge duology by Lyndall Clipstone. I have only read the first book, so I'm thinking of going for the second one also in October if I can find an audiobook for it. Otherwise, I'll probably will read this October, unfortunately. There are probably a couple of other books that I just don't come to mind right away, so I'll definitely, like I said, I have a couple of recommendations written down for later, so I'll talk about those in a second. But yeah, so for the first square, it's mainly just like nature-esque, where it's on the cover like a forest or like nature things on the cover, or it takes place in a nature type setting. It can also just be like a lake or something like that, something that has to do with nature basically. Also extra good if it takes place in like autumn or fall, same thing. If it takes place during autumn and also has kind of more of a like fall type feeling and setting. The next square is a romance book or a book that you love. So this could be like a chance to reread a book that you really love that fits kind of like the fall and Halloween theme, or just a book in general that you loved, or a book that is that has a romance in it, which, you know, that'll be for anyone who, like, it really is just the way you want to interpret it. A book that you loved or that has a romance in it. Obviously there are more than enough of those, so I'll also mention some of the recommendations for those in a second. But it's also pretty straightforward. Most of these prompts, like, I'm pretty sure all of these prompts are pretty straightforward and very easy, unlike the ones I came up with for May. And the third square is read a book that is set during fall or has fall vibes. So kind of like similar to the first one, where, you know, it's just a book that has fall vibes, or like takes place during autumn and fall. So, you know, I guess those two prompts kind of fit together, so you can actually hit two birds with one stone. That's the same, right? The next is a book featuring a drink on the cover. So that could be like a cup of coffee, tea, or any type of drink. Obviously this is kind of like a fall vibe readathon, so it would be better to have like a hot chocolate, coffee or tea, like something like a warm drink, but it really is just the way you want to interpret it. So that's also pretty easy. I don't think I have any recommendations with that. Did I forget that one? I think I might have. Oh no, I guess that one could count. I guess that's the only one I forgot, but you know, there's one in between that could pass as that, so ignore ignore me. Then the 5th prompt is a book with a one-word title, so a title that has just one word, like Lake's Edge, which is also just written in one word. Or goddamn, now hold on a minute. Goddamn, did I have a single recommendation for that? Youngblood, Horrid, Carmilla, Bitterthorn. Okay, so I have a Bonnie. I have a couple. Okay, I didn't forget that one. I was scared for a second, Jesus. But yes, also very straightforward, also pretty easy. There are quite a few books with fall vibes that are also with just one-word titles, so pretty easy as well. Then the 6th prompt is light a candle while reading. Again, very straightforward. That one's like not really reading wise, but you know, it's still kind of like a vibe to have a candle while you're reading, so you know, that's an easy thing that you can immediately scratch off at the beginning of the readathon. Then the 7th prompt is read a book under 100 pages. So that's like a really short book or a manga. I'm definitely going to pick up a manga for the readathon because otherwise I'm not going to read anything. But I feel like I really need a readathon right now because I've been kind of in a slump and the year is almost over, Jesus Christ, and I haven't hit my goal yet, which is unfortunate. Then the 8th prompt is a book that's hot right now, so a popular book, a book that's like very hyped up right now, like a very popular book that's also very self-explanatory. Now that one for me is probably a square that I'm not going to be filling out just because I have a habit of not really reaching for books that are extremely popular, or maybe I'll just go for it once the hype has died down and I know more, and if after the hype dies down and the actual reviews come in of people who actually like don't just like write with the trend of the book and actually give a like valid opinions about the book, then I might just pick it up. But you know, that rarely happens because we all know how popular books are. They're not up my alley most of the time, so that might be a square that I'll, you know, set aside. And then the final prompt is read a creepy book, horror, thriller, or mystery. So that can also just mean anything depending on how you see it. Creepy books, so that could be a horror book, it could be a mystery, a thriller, like it can be anything. I know my TBR is going to be filled to the brim with horror and mystery books, okay, because that is just my favorite like genre to reach for, which is mysteries and also horror, and if it's like the two combined, chef's kiss. Those are all the prompts. I'm assuming they're all very straightforward. I think they're easy to understand. If you have any questions, the readathon will take place in our Discord server, the Bungle Book Club, which I will link down below. You don't have to join the server to participate. You can literally just print out the like or take a screenshot of this and you know, just also join in just on social media, on Instagram, and tag us. But you know, if you have any questions, you can either ask them in the comments or just join us in our Discord server. It's a vibe, okay? It's very chaotic. It's a lot of chaos. Throughout the readathon, we will also be hosting some reading sprints, and if there are enough people that join, we might also do some game nights where we either play like Among Us or some other games that we can play together, so that, you know, but like preferably a game that also kind of fits the fall vibes and also kind of like the horror and stuff like that. So that's why I was thinking of Among Us. I'm always thinking of Among Us because I want to play it a bit more with friends, because I don't like to play in public lobbies because it can quickly go to, you know, racist and homophobic territory. But that's not the point. So yes, that would be the plan, where we would just kind of like do sprints. I am probably going to be the one to host them the most because I am not really that busy in October. I don't know about Steph, but you know, there will be sprints so they can read, you can read together and keep each other accountable. But yes, now let's get into some of the recommendations. First one is The Whispering Dark by Kelly Andrew, which is a book that was already on my TBR for October because it is also a book club pick of another book club that I am in. So yeah, it's also one that has been on my TBR a long time, so I'm excited to get to that one. Next one is A Study in Charlotte by Brittany Caballero. I will always use an excuse to recommend this book. It's one of my favorite series of all time. If you don't know, it's a Sherlock and Watson retelling, which is basically with Sherlock Holmes and John Watson's descendants in their teenage years. So Charlotte is Charlotte Holmes, Sherlock Holmes' descendant, then Jamie Watson is John Watson's descendant, and you also have like the Moriartys there as well. You have a whole, you know, like it's a cute little thing, okay? It's really it's not that cute. It's actually pretty traumatizing, but it's really fun. And it's also pretty well written. I had a lot of fun reading this series. I read it over the course of a couple of years, but I'm always looking forward to rereading it. And also I'm pretty sure it was Steph who I bought a copy of it. So if I reread it, I'll force Steph to read it with me. Steph, I know you're watching this. Next is Readathon by Kat Dunn. Once again, I will never stop trying to find an excuse to recommend this book because I read this one at the beginning of the year, I think. Question mark? I don't remember. But yes, I read this, I think, was it? I think it was at the beginning of this year, I'm pretty sure. I have this book on my mind so often. Is it perfect? No, but I definitely had a lot of fun with it, and it's like kind of like at the beginning you think that the villain is that villain, but then turns out that they're only like considered a villain to keep everybody else safe. I don't know how else to explain. It's really fun. And it's sapphic, so you know, if you hear music, someone's blasting their radio outside. Next one is Carmilla by Sheridan Le Fanu, which is a classic vampire novel. It's also said to predate Dracula, and also is said to have inspired Bram Stoker's Dracula. I have read this book twice now. I'll gladly reread it again for the readathon. Yes, I will. I think I reread it last October. I think this one is going to be like the type of book that I'm gonna reread every year because it's like really short. I think it's under 100 pages. Is it under? I think it is. I think it might just be. It's just over 100 pages. Yeah, it is just over 100 pages. But you didn't hear that from me. But yes, I want to reread it so bad to really annotate it correctly. I read this one as like a buddy read with my hometown best friend, and it was also part of a 24 readathon that we did. I really want to reread this one now. I really do. I think I'm going to reread this one every single year just because it's one of my favorite classics. Wonder why? I also love how this was originally meant, like the author originally meant to write this as in kind of like saying how homosexuality is devilish, like this is what happens when you're gay, and it turned out to be like literally a it had the opposite effect basically. Motherfucker really thought that using a lesbian vampire to basically ward off people from homosexuality was a good idea. Next one is Bunny by Mona Awad, which is a book that I started reading I think like 2-3 years almost at this point. Like I started reading that one and I ended up soft DNFing it just because I had a hard time getting into it, and every single time I pick it up at the most fucked up moment, and then I'm like, okay, that was enough for now. I'm gonna put you on the side again because what the fuck was that? So yeah, I'm not that far into it. I'm not gonna get up to grab it. I swear my bookshelves are a mess. I don't even feel like taking them out and showing them. Jesus. I don't know if I'm personally going to get to this one this month because it's like a hard book to read, and I'm already a slow reader, so it's probably going to take me like 2 months to actually finish this. So you know, I'll try to put my mind to it, but not right now, not yet. Next we have Cemetery Boys by Aiden Thomas, and I'm just going to include any book by Aiden Thomas because they all have kind of like fall vibes, except for the Sunbury Trials. That one would fit summer a bit more, but it's whatever your vibe is. Cemetery Boys is the first Aiden Thomas book that I ever read, and it's still one of my absolute favorites. I would really love to reread it this October if I have an audiobook for it. that's an idea. Next, like I mentioned before, we have Death at Morning House by Maureen Johnson, which is her latest book. I think it came out this month or the month before. It hasn't been out for that long, so that would also be a fun read. I still, like I said, I still need to read 9 Liars, which is also on the list. So I think I'm gonna read 9 Liars this month, and maybe Death at Morning House. That might be an idea. I love Truly Devious. Kind of similar. I think I read A Study in Charlotte and Truly Devious kind of like back to back. I read one book from A Study in Charlotte, or the Charlotte Holmes series, and then I read one book by in the Truly Devious series, and then like that, like switching back and forth. I don't know why I'm saying this, that doesn't matter. Anyway, next we have Don't Tell a Soul by Kristen Miller, which is another book that has been on my TBR for ages. I already had this book when I lived in Tenerife, which is like over 3 years now. I think I've had this one for like close to 5 years. Like, I need to read this book like soon, hopefully, if I have an audiobook. Again, don't ask me what it's about. I think it has a haunted house, if I remember correctly. I know I mentioned it a couple of times before on my channel. I can't remember it for the life of me what it's about. Next we have Don't Let the Force In by CJ Drews, which is a book I have no clue what it's about, but the cover is really cool. That's basically how I convince myself to read any book. It's literally looking at the cover, it looks creepy, it looks pretty, marry me. That's it. Then we have Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir, which I tried to start last year, question mark, I think, but I didn't get far into it before I saw the DNF to pick something else up. I was just not in the mood for it. It's a series that I've been wanting to read for the longest time because some of the things that I've been hearing about are so fucking cool. It's probably a book that I would love. Like, judging from what I've heard of it, it sounds really cool. So who knows? I might pick this one up. Next we have Hell Followed With Us by Andrew Joseph White, which is again a book that has been on my TBR for a while. I bought it when it first came out, and it sounds so cool. It definitely has like religious trauma and like specifically surrounding trans people. So this is probably going to be heart-wrenching. But I love this fucking cover. Also the texture of the dust jacket. Hold on, let me try and find it so I can try and show you guys. Like, I don't know if you guys can see, but it's like matte and it's like almost old, like old feeling. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know if you guys can see. Like, you can definitely not see what's going on, but you know, like, it's weird. I love it. It feels very papery. It's weird. Now that I'm looking at it, I can also just add Painted Devils to my own TBR because I read Little Thieves last year and it immediately became my favorite book of all time. Like, it's one of the books that is going to be hard to top. Painted Devils came out not long after, but the problem is, again, I have the mini paperback, and what happens, they first publish the big paperbacks first, and then they don't match, and then I have to wait a year to get the small paperback. Why did they do that? I don't know either, but yeah, this is going to be on my own personal TBR for the month. But I also suggest Little Thieves because it does fit the readathon quite a bit. Next we have House of Hollow, which is again a book that I read and absolutely adored. It's also one of my favorites of all time. I love that book so much. It lives in my head rent-free, okay? I'm still not over the whole twist of it and like the story in general. It's wild. It's like a more dark twist on the fairy lore. Because like a lot of the times when it comes to like fairies and like retellings or like story that includes fairies, it's always very like magical and just, you know, like cutesy and magical and all that stuff. This one takes it like really with the original, like the lore of it and like the horror of it. It's disgusting, but it's so good. Also the way Crystal Sutherland, Jesus, writes sometimes, it's so disgustingly weird, okay? Like, she can just write about the most mundane thing, but describe it in such a morbid way. It's fascinating. I love this book so much. Next we have House of Furies by Madeline Brooks, which is another series that I read kind of like one book a year. It's also one of my favorite series of all time. I love this series so much. It's not anything really special, but it's just like everything that I love, okay? Like, the main character is pretty much like homeless and has to do some shady business to get by, and then she gets hired at this boarding house where very quickly strange things start to happen, and basically that boarding house is owned by the fucking devil. And there is a book in the attic that kind of like lures bad people, like criminals and like just bad people in general, sinners essentially, and basically all of the people who walk in there are all bad people and sinners, so none of them ever walk out because they get murdered in there and turn into fucking birds. Which I don't think that has ever been explained, why he turns them into birds. It's so wacky. It's weird, but I love it. And then obviously like every single person who's lured into this boarding house is a sinner, a criminal. But then our main character, Louisa, meets one of the guys who also goes to stay at the boarding house, and she just cannot believe that this guy can be evil. Like, there's not an evil bone in this guy's body, but yet he's here. And everybody else who's here is horrible. Like, you can just tell that from the beginning. And, you know, it's a whole thing. And the second book has Egyptian mythology in it, but the way they use mythology in this, it's not like heavy in there, you know, it's more like a subtone to the story that it includes different types of mythology and different parts of history based on the devil and his journey. And then in the third book you basically follow the devil and like his POV from like the past and like what's going on in the present, and it kind of all ties together. And it's just wildly weird. It's a weird book. It's a weird story. I really want to reread it to really, you know, re-experience all of that, because I don't remember much of the first book. But I love this series so much. Jesus Christ. Next we have Horrid by Katrina Leno, which is another book that has been on my TBR for ages, just as long as Don't Tell a Soul. So I think it's about time for me to get to it. Maybe. Next we have Horror Hotel by Victoria Fulton and Faith McLaren, which is a book that I read 2 years ago, I think. Pretty short as well. Let me grab it. It's right here. This is it. It's like really short. Hold on, let me check. How long is it? 238 pages. So it's not under 100 pages, but it's still pretty short. It's also very easy to read. It's about a group of teenagers who have a paranormal investigation type YouTube channel. Like, think Ryan and Shane from BuzzFeed Unsolved, now Ghost Files, and, you know, Sam and Colby, that sort of thing. That's them. I wouldn't be surprised if the author actually took inspiration from those idiots, but yeah. One of the 5 teenagers in that group can actually see ghosts, and so that's kind of like also their whole shtick in their group, is that she can see ghosts, and they use that for their YouTube channel. And then another character in that group is a skeptic. She doesn't fully believe that the other character can see ghosts, but she still goes along with it, you know, just to kind of have that skeptic point of view in the investigation, which is always kind of necessary in this sort of thing, which is why I always gravitate more towards Ghost Files and BuzzFeed Unsolved more so than, you know, Sam and Colby, just because Shane, the skeptic, is in there. It's not an amazing story, but it's still fun, okay? Like, the plot twist was very predictable, and the writing isn't anything special. It's also kind of cheesy at times, but it's a fun time, especially when you're looking at for a quick read for Halloween. This is a fun time, okay? And there were some scenes in there that actually kind of creeped me the fuck out, to the point where I actually had to stop reading at night because I was going to have nightmares. So they definitely had the horror vibes down for this one. Next we have Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which is a book that I have also had on my TBR for ages. Still hadn't gone to it yet, but I have seen her books more and more often as well. But Mexican Gothic has always stood out to me a lot more, so I think I might try to get to that one as well if I have an audiobook for it. Don't want to make any promises. Next we have Phantom Heart by Kelly Gregg. Kelly Gregg. Sorry if I mispronounced the name. Which is again a book that has been on my TBR for ages. But I think I'm first going to read The Phantom of the Opera, which this is a retelling of that. I don't know exactly what kind of retelling it is. I don't know if it's like a modern retelling or anything like that. I don't know. But I still want to read The Phantom of the Opera first, because I know there are a couple of other books that have taken inspiration from The Phantom of the Opera. Like one of my favorite movies of all time, Monstre à Paris, also is inspired by The Phantom of the Opera. So I want to read that one first. I think I'm going to read that one in October. Next we have The Book Eaters, which is a pretty popular book. I've seen it a lot. I've heard mixed things about it, but I'm still pretty excited just because the title, the book cover is gorgeous, and the premise of it is very intriguing. So it doesn't really matter how much negativity the book is getting. The premise is still intriguing enough for me to want to get to it. Then we have The Diviners by Libba Bray, which once again has been in my TBR for ages. But I can never get my hands on a fucking audiobook, and this book is pretty thick, and so it's pretty intimidating to me. But I'm still gonna try and get to it at one point. Don't know if that'll be, you know, this month, but definitely trying to get to it soon. Next we have The Girl in the Picture by Alexandra Morner, which is a book that I read a long time ago. I think this was one of the first English books that I read back when I first started reading. I don't remember much of it. All I do remember is that a guy died, and then his girlfriend and another girl are basically suspected of his murder, and they both go and investigate each other, and then they end up coming, like, basically the investigation is joined together and then they solve the murder. It was pretty predictable. There was neither of them, but it was still a fun read, especially because it's like one of the first books, like I said, one of the first books I read in English. So, you know, it's there. I think I might reread it at one point, just because I don't remember much of it. Next we have The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Panner, which is again a book I will not really shut up about, because I want more books like this, okay? Listen, if you were to ask me what my favorite true crime story is, it is going to be the story of Giulia Tofana and the story of Acqua Tofana, which is a whole thing about a woman in Italy in the 1500s, I think 15, 16, something along those lines. Basically Italy, where women had less rights than a fucking dog, okay? And so when a woman was supposed to be married, if she wanted to get a divorce, the only option was to basically have her husband die. And so Giulia Tofana came up with this poison that no one was ever able to recreate, that was basically invisible to any kind of autopsy. Obviously nowadays with the technology that might not be the same thing, and this book felt really inspired by that story. I couldn't find anywhere where it was inspired by the story of Giulia Tofana, but because of like the two different POVs in the past and in the present, it's giving Giulia Tofana, okay? It's giving Giulia Tofana. Okay, it might not even be related to Giulia Tofana, because I mean, the song, what was it? It was a song by Paris Paloma. As good a reason. That song also gave a lot of Giulia Tofana vibes, to the point where so many people commented it that she actually did research on it. So I think this might be a similar situation. But yeah, it just gave off Giulia Tofana vibes, and I was very excited. So then we have The Luminaries, which I think came out last year and has been on my TBR ever since, and I've been wanting to get to it and I haven't gotten to it yet. I know that the sequel has already come out too, so that's fun to know. Next we have The Taking of Jake Livingstone by Ryan Douglas, which once again has been on my like digital TBR for a while now. I've been eyeing this book for a while just because it sounds really cool. but I've never gone to it. I know it has ghosts, and that's it. I don't know anything else. Next, we have a book that recently came out, which is This Ravenous Fate by Haley Dennings, which is a sapphic vampire book. I love how we're getting more and more sapphic vampires now. I love it so much. I'm so here for it. So yeah, that's all I know, is that it's sapphic vampires, and that's all I need to know to want to read it. Next, like I said before, we have Truly Devious. Can be either just Truly Devious or the whole series or the standalone series, the standalone sequels. According to Maureen Johnson, you don't need to read the main series to read the standalones, but reading the series will obviously give a bit more context on the characters. Next, we have Where Sleeping Girls Lie by Ferida Abike Yimide. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, which is the same author as Ace of Spades. I read Ace of Spades 3 years ago when it first came out, and I've been so excited ever since she announced that she was writing another book. And I own it. I have Where Sleeping Girls Lie, but I don't know when I'll be getting to it because I can't find an audiobook for it, so who knows, we'll see. Next, we have Youngblood by Sasha Lawrence, which again is sapphic vampires. I think it's also a bit of a murder mystery, question mark. Don't quote me on that. Then we have Edgewood by Kristen Ciccarelli, question mark, which I think has something to do with dance, if I remember correctly. I don't remember. I do remember that this book came out last year, I think, or this year. Last year. This year? I don't remember. It came out not that long ago, and the cover looked really cool, so it's been on my TBR, but you know, I haven't gotten to it yet. Next, we have The Botanical Daughter by Noah Medlock, which I will fully admit I have no idea what this book is about. I just saw botanical and figured there was poison involved, and I got excited. Next, we have An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, which I think this is also another sapphic vampire, but don't quote me on that because I've been mixing this book up with another one a lot, so I don't know. Don't quote me on that, but that's the one that's on here. Then we have Honeybloods by I.S. Bell, which again, sapphic vampires. Then we have A Darker Mischief by Derek Millman. I have no clue what this is about. It looks very creepy, so I'm excited. And finally, we have Your Shadow Half Remains by Sunny Moraine, which is also sapphic horror. And that's it. A lot of these I don't really know much about, other than like a few key things, and other times it's just me being obsessed with the cover. I don't know what else to tell you. But yes, if you have any other recommendations, you can also always leave them down in the comments. Also, please go subscribe to Steph because this is her readathon. So go subscribe to her. I will leave a link to her YouTube channel down below. She's also going to make an announcement video about the readathon, so stay tuned for that one. And yes, like I said, if you have any more questions, you can leave them in the comments or ask it over in our Discord server, which will also be linked down below. And I'll hope to see you guys during the readathon. Bye!